between the lines. Got the read. Got the read.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom DeAmber. As always, we are very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. My friends, we only have an hour with you today, and we would need a whole day to go through the news and all the events that are going on asymmetrically, symmetrically, in front of us, behind us, above the table, below the table. Okay, real quick. There was a conference, and it was about high tech. And the only reason why I am not a high tech guy, but the only reason why I'm not even a low tech guy, but the only reason why what caught my caught my eye of this was some opinions that, and listen to this is the headlines: screens are poison. Tech elites keeping devices out of their children's schools. Whoa. These are all the beautiful people from Silicon Valley, tech elites, my friends, are keeping digital devices out of the schools of their children. Now, mind you, all of these children, I'm sure, don't go to the public indoctrination fool systems. They go to real education systems. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that these digital devices, this psychotherapists are being too quick. Tom Kirsten says that the philosophy and the theory that these digital devices benefits the students has been proven to be absolutely false. He said that the tech in the classroom is affecting kids' emotions, contributing to anxiety, depression, and suicide. I totally agree with that. And many other detrimental effects. But I find it interesting that the elite of the technological world are making their kids think for themselves. Wow. But what are they doing to your children? At a very high cost, I will say. Okay, my friends. It turns out CNN's, I guess this man's name is Don Lemon. He actually declared last night on his broadcast that the biggest threat to the security of our nation is white men. And also posted that there should be a white guy ban restricting their travel. We have to stop demonizing people and realize that the biggest terror threat in this country is white men. Most of them radicalized to the right, and we have to start doing something about them. There is no travel ban on them. There is no white guy ban, so what do we do about that? I am going to stop for the sake of time right there. So let's look at some FBI statistics. I know we've done this before with you. Let's look at who the real threat to our society is at street level. Okay. This is the FBI's crime statistics data from 2016. Murder and manslaughter. Look at the demographics here. Black population way above the Hispanic and white. Robbery rate per 100,000. Black population way above Hispanic and white. Rape rate per 100,000. Black population way above Hispanic and white. Black aggravated assault rate. Black population way above Hispanic and white. Motor theft crime rate. Black population, again, way above Hispanic and white. Prostitution per 100,000, black, way above Hispanic and white. And then weapons violations per 100,000, black, way above Hispanic and white. Isn't that interesting? So, if you also looked at every one of these demographics, who had the least percentage of crime out of all these categories? White people. Now, is this just because black people have a different pigmentation in their skin? Not at all. This is because, my friends, they have been placed on a plantation of ignorance and victimhood. And we've got into this social engineering many, many times in this program. But I have to ask you, why are you watching and supporting an organization that, number one, is nothing but, as everyone says, who's paying attention, Nothing but fake news. That is as fake as it gets. And talk about, again, more divide paradigm. Okay, let us continue. Here's one thing that they don't want to see, my friends, with the black community. This is a picture from this past weekend from the Blexit, B-L-E-X-I-T, as in black exit from the Democratic divide, paradigm, victimhood plantation. Folks, look at these black people. Look at their eyes. They have energy. Look how they're dressed. Their pants actually, their pants aren't hanging down at their ankles and their knees. Look at them. High energy, great energy. Contributors to society, not detrimental to society. So this is what they are afraid of. They are afraid of their divide paradigm being weakened to take away the control mechanism. What was it LBJ said? I think it was in 1963, I believe, or 64. He said, we'll have them N-word, fill in the N-word, voting Democratic, laughing about it forever. And what was he talking about? He was talking about the divide paradigm. He was talking about the victimhood paradigm. And he was also talking about keeping these people on a ball and chain through the welfare program, through the lack of education and into an indoctrination system. So understand, my friends, this is what they're afraid of. And they are afraid of all of us seeing this divide paradigm and the mechanisms of it and no longer accept it. We will no longer accept it. We won't partake in it. We are walking away from the federal plantation of ignorance and lies and violence. Okay, I'm so happy to see this happening. And I will tell you something, my friends. The biggest spokesman for this movement is a black woman by the name of Candace Owens. And I think it's awesome. And I applaud Candace Owens, and I applaud all the black people that have seen outside, have escaped that plantation with reasoning and education and being able to see what's in front of them. I applaud you. I think it's awesome for your race. I think it's awesome for our country, and I just think it's going to benefit everything and everybody. But I'll tell you who it's not going to benefit. It is not going to benefit the globalist. Let us continue. Okay, Mr. Mueller, back in the news again. Now, I'm going to be real quick about this. Obviously, Mr. Mueller, I'm not going to get into how he's been accused of rape by a very credible person and witness. I'm not going to get into that. But you may have discovered that yesterday, Whitey Bulger, James Whitey Bulger, the famous Irish mafioso from Boston back in the day. If you want to learn more about, I never say go watch a movie, but watch the movie Departed. It's called Departed. It has some big actors in it, but I never say go watch a movie, folks, but watch the movie Departed because they followed a lot of history there, real history. There was so much corruption at the state and federal levels of law enforcement that nobody trusted everybody, and they all wound up working against everybody because Whitey Bulger was in bed with so many of these people through bribes and payoffs and kickoffs and human intent and all the rest of it, that he had such a web of corruption within these law enforcement agencies and the Justice Department, all of it, folks, the FBI, all of it. And who was at the top of the kingpin of this? Mr. Mueller. He was the FBI director for the district that was housed in Boston. Federal district. Remember, the federal government can only be involved in districts, territories, and enclaves. So what they do, they made us all districts. There is a District of Vermont. We've gone into that a million times. Okay, let us go on. This is written by Dave Hodges. It's done so well, I'm going to read this pretty much verbatim. Here we go. James Whitey Bulger, who was captured in 2011 after 16 years on the run, was found dead at a high-security facility in West Virginia. Robert Mueller plays a prominent role in this story, and could Mueller be connected to his mysterious death? How does Bulger go into a high-security facility, federal facility, and is killed on his very first day? The bottom line is Robert Mueller played a prominent role in the reason why Bulger got away with criminal enterprising for murder as long as he did. And we are entrusting the man who made Bulger's antics possible to continue to investigate our president in an investigation that hasn't yielded one shred of evidence against Trump in nearly 2 years. With the death of Whitey Bulger, Mueller is able to erase much of his criminal past and associations with the mafia in Boston. You don't believe it. The evidence is overwhelming, and Mueller stood to gain the most from Whitey Bulger's murder. Robert Mueller, now listen, Robert Mueller is a monster of the highest order. The fact is that this heinous figure could get himself appointed to conduct a witch hunt against the president is nothing short of shocking. I disagree with that. This fits the bill perfectly. This is both a partial and inadequately brief but stunning set of revelations regarding Mueller's length of criminal behaviors. Okay. What role did Mueller play in illegal and conflict of interest in a very cozy relationship between the FBI and the Boston mafia figures that resulted in multiple murders, blackmail, RICO violations, witness tampering, and many, many more crimes involving FBI complicity under the direction of Robert Mueller? Special Counsel Robert Mueller, appointed to remove Trump from office, was presented by the mainstream media as this pristine man of impeccable integrity with nothing could have been further from the truth. Both Mueller and former disgraced FBI Director James Comey had their images crafted by the mainstream media in the same manner. However, it has now been demonstrated that Comey leaked classified information that he thought would be damaging to Trump. He committed perjury to Congress. Comey should be imprisoned for but now not. He is instead making book deals. And no one can be certain that a book deal awaits Mueller, as he should be able to remove Trump. Should he be able to remove Trump? Both men are lying, extreme left-wing freaks who should be in prison. I agree. Other two men, Robert Mueller is much more criminal than Comey. Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit here. The New American detailed recounted in 1998 Whitey Bulger case entitled FBI Covering for Criminals, which was about the murderous boss of Boston's notorious Winter Hill Gang. Whitey Bulger and his gang of Irish mafia carried out a reign of murderous terror under the protection of the FBI and the state police, Massachusetts State Police, and the Boston Police, and the Justice Department, who was under the direction of then U.S. Attorney to Boston, Robert Mueller, and the cover-up continued after Mueller's appointment as FBI Director. Time after time, Massachusetts state and local police had their elaborate years-long investigation of Bulger's foiled FBI interference. At the center of all of it was Robert Mueller. FBI Special Agent John Conley and John Morris, who was in charge of the FBI's organized crime squad, were Bulger's protectors, would tip him off to investigations and wiretaps by other agencies. The corruption was so well known in the FBI that Martin Scorsese made a 2006 film about the case called The Departed. That's the movie I was speaking of. Let's continue. Eventually, FBI handler John Comey tipped off Bulger that he was about to be arrested. Bulger escaped justice for 16 years. When he was finally caught in 2011, he was convicted of 32 counts of RICO, including 19 murders. This is who Robert Mueller's FBI was protecting. While Bulger was on the run, his FBI partners in crime, Conley and Morris, were arrested and indicted. In 2008, Conley was convicted for his role in the murders of FBI informant John P. Callahan and Oklahoma businessman Roger Wheeler. Conley's boss, John Morris, who reported directly to Mueller, was allowed to escape jail by testifying against his former colleagues in crime. Okay, according to the Boston Globe columnist Kevin Cullen, who wrote an article entitled "The Lingering Question for the FBI Director." In his title, Cullen was referring to then-Director Robert Mueller, who had previously been one of the DOJ's attorneys assigned to investigate the criminal operations of Bulger and the FBI's handling of the matter. Cullen was outraged at Mueller's conduct in covering up for Bulger, and so much that Cullen opposed Mueller's reappointment as FBI Director. Part of Mueller's cover-up was related to the Albano case, in which the DOJ and the FBI framed four men in 1965 gangland murder. Folks, these people were actually from Providence, Rhode Island. You see, in the Irish mob, you had the Irish mob in Boston, and in Providence, you had the Patriarchal family from Providence, which is where I'm from. These guys used to walk into restaurants and bang each other all the time. It was unbelievable. It was really unbelievable. All of this When you read a book by an informant from the patriarch of crime family, when he turned state's evidence, he wrote a book about it, folks, and I'll never forget the stat. Never forget this stat. He had 93% of the Providence police force in his payroll. He had judges. He had everybody. And this is in Providence. It's the same thing. And folks, it ain't just Providence or Boston. It's the whole blanket. It's from stem to stern corruption. Let us continue. Okay, part of Mueller's cover-up was related to the Albano case, which the DOJ and the FBI framed 4 men in 1965 gangland murder. Mueller engaged in a cover-up after cover-up because Bulger's Irish Mafia was making certain FBI officials, including Mueller, who would enhance his reputation by giving up Bulger's Mafia opposition. This is how the Patriarca family went down in Providence, my friends. This is how the Raymond Patriarca's family went down in Providence. Eventually, 36 years later, the 4 men would be exonerated, blah, blah, blah. Let us continue. Famed attorney Alan Dershowitz confirms that his account is an interview he gave in Newmax. He's the guy, he's talking about Mueller. He's the guy that kept 4 innocent people in prison for many years in order to protect the cover of Whitey Bulger as an FBI informer. Those of us in Boston don't have such a high regard for Mueller because we remember his story. This story, the government had to pay out tens of millions of dollars because Whitey Bulger, a notorious mass murderer, became a government informer against the mafia. Folks, who do you think paid the tens of millions of dollars? You and I. Let's continue. And that's regarded in Boston as one of the great scandals of modern judicial history. And Mueller was right at the center of it. He was right at the top of it, my friends, the top of it. So he is not without criticism by the people who know him in Boston. Mueller went from the U.S. attorney in the Bulger case to the FBI director where he continued the Boston Mafia cover-up. But there's more. Criminality in the Bulger case. Mueller's involvement goes back to Clinton, and we have covered this many times, both Bill and Hillary. Perhaps if Robert Mueller's special counsel wants to investigate Russian collusion, he should start with himself. Okay, what's he talking about here, starting with himself? He is talking about uranium-1, which we've covered many times. Robert Mueller hand-delivered under orders from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton the first sample of the uranium, which 21% of the total uranium in the United States was sold to a company called Uranium-1, which was a sub-parent company of a Russian company, and I forget the name of it right now, excuse me. But how did the Russians pay Secretary of State Hillary Clinton? Bill Clinton got a $500,000 American dollar check for a 50-minute speech in Russia. Do the math on that one. So I'm going to stop here for the sake of time. Now, let us go into something else. We have the caravan going on. And I've been doing some research. You know, follow the yellow brick road, my friends. You've got to follow the yellow brick road. Okay. Now, the mainstream media is saying that there's between 4,000 and 7,000 people in this first caravan. There's actually a second caravan that is organized, that is pushed behind it. And they 2 days ago, they went over the Mexican-Guatemala border and they destroyed the vetting station for immigration of the Mexican government. They destroyed it. I saw the pictures, absolutely destroyed it. All right? So, I just want to go over some stats with you. And I want you to think about what I'm saying to you, because I want to give you stats right now that this goes on every day. Every day. According to ICE, there is 1,700 people per day on our southern border that are captured trying to cross the border. This is an average here. 1,700 are captured. Of that 1,700 per day, over 10% of them have known affiliations with the likes of ISIS, which was formed by who? The Obama administration, John McCain, so forth. Hillary Clinton, etc., and MS-13. So I'm just going to say for easy numbers. I know we got Common Core people here, so I want to keep this real simple. And I'm going to keep my language at a 4th grade reading level because that's where we are right now when the average high school student graduates high school as compared to 1964 when the federal government took over education. So I'll keep it simple. So we got 1,700 people every day that are captured. 10% of them are affiliated with known terrorist organizations. MS-13, ISIS, etc. All anti-American, all very violent, all financed by the banking elite. So if you want to take that, that's 170 people a day that are captured, that coming across our border, that have been captured with known affiliations of these murderous gangs. So according to the mainstream media, we've got between 4,000 and 7,000 people coming over. Okay? So if we want to stay with this rule of thumb here, then we've got between 400 and 700 people in this gang, in this caravan. What a political choice of words. In this caravan, it's an invasion force, folks. You're either here, when you're coming across a border into another nation, you're either here to assimilate or you're here to invade. There is no middle line with this. You're either here to assimilate into the culture, the laws of the country you're coming to, or you're here to make change of it and invade. There's no middle line. It's one or the other. It's like our commercial law system. You're either a creditor or a debtor. There is no in-between. So, according to people that I pay attention to, with sources on the ground, and the photos that I've seen, I say, and my sources confirm this, multiple, I think I'm up to like 12 or 13 sources now, that there is between 42,000 and 50,000 in invasion force number 1. So, we get into the financing of this. And let's stay with our 10%. All right? Let's stay with our 10% as I'm writing up these numbers to you, 42,000 and 50,000. Because now you're talking 4,200 and 5,000 known terrorist affiliates. But let's follow the yellow brick road. They're all being financed, even according to the FBI and DHS right now. It's costing about $350,000 per day for invasion force number 1. $350,000. Someone's writing a check for that. Who's writing the check? Here we are. Okay. The funding is in concert with the Bank of International Settlements. You have seen this picture before. And the reason why you have, my friends, is because this is who owned your land. This is why you don't own your land. Bill, could we blow that up, my friend? And then we have your birth certificate is there. Okay? This is the Bank of International Settlements, folks. This is the building. Your birth certificate is held at the Office of Risk Management at the state capital you were born in, and then the insolvent corporation, state of fill in the blank, gets credit. That's right, monetized debt. You are monetized debt through your sweat equity, and it goes from the Federal Reserve to the IMF. And at the top of that pyramid, folks, are these people right here, the Bank of International Settlements. They are the people who are behind all the debt, all of it, everything. The bondage, the slavery, all of it. So then from there, we have various organizations. And we start with the laundering of the money. And that takes us to HSBC Bank out of China. Now, you may remember that because we've covered this bank before. You remember we covered this bank when they were caught laundering billions and billions of dollars of drug money with the government and different drug cartels? And who was the main person in charge of the board of directors of that bank? Mr. James Comey. Yes, Mr. James Comey. Former FBI director. You remember him. Former FBI agent that was just mentioned in the Whitey Bulger cover-ups. Former FBI director that was mentioned and put right on it with the Rose Law Firm and the Clinton Foundation cover-ups. Folks, these people go back a long way and put in places of position and protection to do what they're doing right here. Same players, my friends. These are just the foot soldiers. The Muellers, the Comneys, the Clintons. These are the people you're allowed to see. Let us continue on this financing. So, we go from the Bank of International Settlements to the HSBC Bank, Mr. Comey again. And then we go, now listen, you may recognize some of these, to the Clinton Foundation, to U.S. Aid, excuse me, to the Carnegie Foundation, to the Ford Foundation. And then we go on to the MoveOn.org Society. Yes, another player you're probably familiar with, Mr. George Soros. Now, U.S. Aid, folks, is a liaison between the UN and your tax dollars. And every single foundation that I just mentioned here gets your tax dollars. You're financing the invasion of our country with your tax dollars. And let's not forget the top of the pyramid, where the Bank of International Settlements owns your bond, owns your life, your sweat equity, your property. I'm not just talking your land. I'm talking, when I say property, my friends, I mean A to Z, all of it. You own nothing. The only thing you own is the burden of the debt that these people have placed upon you and your children. That's all you own. But as I was doing this research, I came across an organization that I'm embarrassed to say I've never heard of before or read of. And it is called Pueblo San Frontiers. Pueblo San Frontiers. And this organization has put hundreds of millions of dollars for the last 10 years into the immigration program. What is the immigration program, my friends? The immigration program is when you form things like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and you put them in countries to take them over, to usurp the power of the people, balkanize the nations, destroy elected governments, and put in your own, well, de facto ad hoc regime. Completely Machiavellian. But this organization has hundreds of millions of dollars into these immigration programs, and particularly I'm talking about the one, Libya, Syria, Europe. So I say, well, D'Ambra, how is it? You don't, wow, I mean, I study pretty hard, folks. I'm not just making this up. I really do. I drive my wife personally crazy with it. And some of my friends too. But 10 years, these people, this organization has been putting hundreds of millions of dollars into these movements, and all these other people I mentioned to you, I'm very familiar with. I could go over their sheet completely, verbatim from the top of my head. So I'm thinking, wow, who is this organization? So I did a lot of research, and I must tell you, it took some real digging to find out who writes the checks for Pablo Sanfrantrias. You want to know what I discovered? Pablo Sanfrantrias is a nihilist organization for the Vatican. It is part of the Catholic Church, the same Catholic Church that the deputy pope they have pictures with is now being charged with not just importing cocaine, and they got pictures of him snorting cocaine with little boys and all, but actually human trafficking and sex slavery of little boys to the tune of 148 of them. We covered that with you verbatim. And the same Catholic Church, my friends, that took pedophile priests, didn't even follow state laws, and put them into other parishes without telling the parish people that were there, the clergy, the hierarchy of the various parishes, no trail whatsoever to go out and do what? Assault your children. And you still pay them. Oh, and did I tell you they don't pay any taxes? And did I tell you that the Pope, the last 3 popes of all said openly that we should have open borders while they are behind a Vatican walls that some are as far as 200 feet high and none are lower than 50? But we should tear down our border and let these invaders in our country? Sure. Makes perfect sense to me, doesn't it to you? How do you support that organization? How are you watching CNN? Folks, you may say, oh, I don't vote, I don't vote. You vote with your sweat equity every day by supporting these industries, these corporations, this media, this academia, all the above that is assaulting our liberties and taking us for complete fools. All right, I have to stop. Now, one last note here. A lot of people are saying, okay, this is great. Trump's going to stop the foreign aid from Honduras and Guatemala and all these places that are in Mexico that's forming this. I agree with that, but you've got to think that every time there's an action, there is a reaction, and what is going to go on with that foreign aid being taken away. And I agree with it, but the consequence of that is going to be a void of opportunity is going to be created for our adversaries, particularly China. They are heavily in Africa, my friends, and they have created a very strong foothold in Central and South America. And God knows they have a very strong foothold in our country. Can you say Long Beach, California? In Canada, Vancouver. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, Trudeau up in Canada allowed China to put all their submarine sensors all along our international border. So the Chinese would know when our subs coming out of Connecticut, Maine, and Washington State on the west side on the Pacific side would know when our subs are leaving and when they're going. Canada allowed that to happen. Not only just allowed it to happen, signed it with a treaty with China. Understand what I'm saying? Folks, we're talking about this caravan. I get it. We're talking about the caravan, I get it. But understand, folks, this caravan is not an organic movement by some downtrodden people. They have cell phones that, $1,000 cell phones. Look at the clothes, look at the footwear. They got brand new buses. Brand new buses were delivered to them yesterday. Brand new. I saw the pictures. There wasn't a scratch, a dent. Brand new buses. Who financed that? Who organized that? Who put that together? Who delivered them? Who's feeding these people? Who's organizing them? It takes dollars. It takes money. All right, some quick quotes. Have to be quick. Saul Alinsky, the very first radical known to man, rebelled against the establishment and did so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, was Lucifer. All these people are Satanists, my friends. Let us continue. The despair is there. Now it is up to us to go in and rub raw the sores of discontent, galvanize them for the radical social change. Can you say invading force? Can you say secret silent cells that are established in our country already by national governments and these NGOs and these all operated by the control of these bankers sitting in our country waiting for the activation orders? Let us continue. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Okay, this is Robert Forson. As for the petty little world of journalism, the media demonstrates how it, more than anyone, is careful to traffic only in authorized ideas and wares, while at the same time it fosters, through its antics, the illusion of a free circulation of ideas and opinions, not unlike jesters in a tyrant's court. Well, folks, who are the jesters in a tyrant's court right now? Can you say attorneys? Done shows on that. Can't get into it right now. But you say what he's saying about the media? You know, white men are the biggest threat to our society, but yet we have the lowest crime. There's 4 and 7,000. No, 42 and 50,000, folks. Let us continue. This is Mr. Huxley. By the means of ever more effective methods of mind manipulation, the democracies will change their nature. The quaint old forms, elections, parliaments, supreme courts, and all the rest will remain. The underlying substance will be a new kind of totalitarianism. All the traditional names, all the hallowed slogans will remain exactly what they were in the good old days. Democracy and freedom will be the theme of every broadcast and editorial. Well, that's changed to some degree because they're more desperate, aren't they? Meanwhile, the ruling oligarchy and its highly trained elite of soldiers, policemen, thought manufacturers, and mind manipulators will quietly run the show as they see fit. Who's the thought manufacturers and mind manipulators that are highly trained? It's a very expensive system. It's called the public fool system. Let us continue. On, again, education. Education is useless without the Bible. The Bible was America's basic textbook in all fields. God's word contained in the Bible has furnished all the necessary rules to direct our conduct. He doesn't say my conduct. He says our conduct. He is blanketing our society. Look what has happened to our society since 1964 when they took prayer away from the schools. They didn't just take prayer away from the schools, my friends. They took morality, the word of Jesus Christ, God's words, the lessons of history, away from the schools. They made it a secular school system where you no longer have rights from a creator, you have benefits from a benevolent government. Let us continue. Our conduct. Look at this picture. Does this look like 7,000 people to you? Folks, I was a former, I had nothing to do with the NFL now, but I was a former NFL season ticket holder to the New England Patriots. 24 years. 24 years. Used to leave at 1:30 in the morning, go down, meet my buddies, drive back to Foxborough, go to the game. No kidding. Would meet my mother in Providence, Rhode Island at 6 in the morning to meet her for breakfast and be at my friend's house by 7:30. That's right. I know I'm crazy. I get it. And wasted a lot of money. But my point being, I have seen stadiums of 58,000 people empty out, all right, and go in. I've seen it. One shot, in and out. Folks, I can tell you right there, that picture right there, and I won't get into the math because I'm sake of time. The demographics on that picture, there is easily 8 to 10,000 people right there. Easy, if not more. Probably more like 12. All being financed. Take a look at the vehicles. They're aid vehicles, my friends. Like I said, they estimate $350,000 a day right now. I want to read this quote to you. This is from Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, and unfortunately I am not going to have time to get into this whole thing because this is an awesome, awesome breakdown done by John Whitehead. This is William O. Douglas. As nightfall does not come at once, neither does oppression. In both instances, there is a twilight when everything remains seemingly unchanged. And it is in such twilight that we all must be most aware of change in the air, however slight, lest we become unwitting victims of the darkness. Isn't that brilliant? And what an analogy. Because, we've all been up at dusk and dawn. And we all know, he's, of course, talking at nightfall here, but we all know, at dusk how it's like it doesn't change. Metal comes down, the amber light diminishes, but then it stays the same. And the change is so slow and incremental. And then it seems to stay the same. Then all of a sudden, lights out, darkness. Well, he's using that as an analogy to the political status of us as a society. Okay. Unfortunately, I've gone way beyond the time. I'm going to read as much of this as I can. John Whitehead. And yet another ratcheting up for calls of government to clamp down on this industry by imposing more costly security measures without any real benefit, more militarized police, more surveillance, more widespread mental health screening of the general population, more threat assessments, and behavioral sensing warnings, more gun control measures, more surveillance cameras with facial recognition capabilities, more see something, say something programs aimed at turning Americans into snitches and spies, more metal detectors and whole body imaging devices at so-called soft targets, more roaming squads of militarized police empowered to do more stop and frisk searches, more fusion centers to centralize and disseminate information to law enforcement agencies, and more government monitoring of what Americans say and do, where they go, what they buy, and how they spend their time. Folks, this is all measures against you and I inside the borders of our country, yet we have an invading force of 42,000 to 50,000 unvetted people, and according to DHS and ICE, 92% of them are military-aged men. All of this is placed against us while we have this terrorist threat. Remember 9/11? We have this terrorist threat, but yet they clamp down on us because, after all, the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1933 made it quite clear who the enemy is, didn't it? Excuse me. The enemy is you and I. Because if you remember the definition of enemy in the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1933, when the insolvent corporation went bankrupt, USA Inc., and all the subservient corporations below it, state of fill in the blank, city of fill in the blank, town of fill in the blank, municipality of fill in the blank, they all went insolvent. This is why you have a birth certificate. Because you're bonded. You're the co-surety to this facade debt. So all of these measures are measured against us. Oh, and by the way, for our own protection. But yet we have the UN giving orders to Trump 2 days ago, ordering him, I didn't read that verbatim, I'm sorry, ordering him to open the borders to these asylum seekers, to use their words. Well, they were offered asylum in Mexico. They were supposed to accept asylum, according to the UN, when they entered Mexico. They didn't, because they're going norte. Norte. They're coming north. So all these measurements are used against you and I. Well, heck, you've been to an airport lately? Tried to get your Vermont driver's license lately? Tried to work in the medical field and tell them that we're not going to take our toxic vaccines? Go ahead. You lose your job. You won't be able to travel no more. And if you try to travel on the corporation's roads, you'll be arrested. And then your travel benefits will be restricted even more. Okay, let us continue. All these measures play into the government's hands. All of these measures add up to more government power, less real security, and far less freedom. As we have learned the hard way, the phantom promise of safety in exchange for restricted or regulated liberty is a false, misguided doctrine that has no basis in truth. Things are falling apart. When things start to fall apart or implode, ask yourself, who stands to benefit? My friends, how many times have I said to you, whenever anything is going on, ask yourself two things. One, who's benefiting from this event? And then, who's financing it? And you will always find, it's a sure shot, that the people that are benefiting are the ones that are financing. Doesn't that make sense? Well, history proves it to be true. Let us continue. You know, it's funny when he says about, funny, not funny, but as in humorous, but when things start to fall apart or implode, you know, there's a fellow by the name of Gerald Salente, and he says, when people have nothing to lose, they lose it. In most cases, it's the government that stands to benefit by amassing greater powers at the citizenry's expense. Unfortunately, the government's answer to civil unrest and societal violence, as always, will lead us further down the road we've traveled since 9/11 towards totalitarianism and away from freedom. With alarming regularity, the nation is being subjected to a spate of violence that not only terrorizes the public, but also destabilizes the country's fragile ecosystem and gives the government greater justification to crack down, lock down, and institute even more authoritarian policies for the so-called sake of national security without any objections from the citizenry. Crisis, reaction, solution. You see, folks, the reason why they're spending $350,000 a day and have got, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars into these invasion programs from Africa into Europe, from the Middle East into Europe, from Central America into North America, from various countries within South America onto each other. You see? Because they're creating chaos. Ordo ab chaos, my friends. Order from chaos. They create chaos. And now we find these 2 days ago, these new buses are taking these people, closer to our border quicker. Well, now we find out that they're meeting a timetable. You see, they weren't making the proper time to get here when the event is to take place, which I'm guessing, or not guessing, if history is my barometer, it is, I would say they want to affect the midterms and beyond. This isn't just about the midterms. This is about beyond. That's why there's caravan number 2 behind it. So, who's benefiting here? Who's not going to benefit here? Who's financing the invasion? You are. You're financing the invasion. You're financing the invasion with your apathy. You're financing the invasion with your ignorance. You're financing your invasion with the tax code that you contribute to. You're financing the invasion with your own money. Lack of money, but money in the sense of what you realize as wealth. We are financing our own demise with the strength of the authoritarian government, with the NGOs that implement these crises and policies, with the ABC agencies throughout the government. We are financing our own demise, my friends. We bond our own children to have generations of perpetual debt as co-sureties to this facade debt. And now the warfare is going from asymmetrical too symmetrical. We see it with MoveOn.org, Black Lives Matter, Antifa. Them are all violent organizations operating openly with police protection in some major urban centers of the politicians and the police. So, how do we change this? How do we have effect? Don't expect to see a change if you don't make one. Don't expect to see a change if you don't make one. Well, you have the opportunity collectively, my friends, to make a change or continue a change or stop a change or begin a change in 6 days. And I'm speaking about voting. You know, every week we come out here and we talk to you about the problems. And we try to be positive with, especially lately, the jobs market, the economy, getting out of the TPP, NAFTA renegotiate, all these things, wonderful. But you got to realize that all Trump has done, he has not implemented one of his own policies yet. He has just taken the hangman's noose off the throat of our country that was been put into play by the likes of these government bureaucrats, these NGOs, these international bankers. They are afraid of Blixit that we demonstrated to you earlier. They're afraid of you turning off the CNNs. They're afraid of you not buying the rags they call newspapers anymore. They're afraid of you getting out of the entertainment. The NFL, which spits in the face of our flag and every sacrifice made by so many for so long. And not just our veterans, but I'm talking families. You have the opportunity, my friends, individually and collectively, in 6 days to participate in what I assuredly know, and as I say, I study hard, is the most important midterm election in my lifetime, and I turn 60 years old next week. This is the most important political event in my lifetime. And I'm talking political event, voting. Of course, political events, you could include 9/11, you could include JFK. I'm talking about your opportunity to have effect in the policies and the political happenings of our country. How dare you sit that out? Why would you sit that out? Because I know some, and it's true. Oh, if you vote, you're part of the corporation. Well, folks, the American people are not ready for that education yet. Trump is trying with it. He threw a couple out last week when he said, you know, why do we have a private institution controlling our credit? The American people don't need that. He was talking about the Federal Reserve. If you've been watching this program for the last 350-something shows that we've done, that was the first thing we talked about. And every week we talk about it. Because that is the linchpin of the control mechanism of these bankers that formulate the web that we are wrapped in. And the only method we have right now to get out of this web, at least spring ourselves from one portion of it, is by voting. How dare you not participate in the system that so many have made so many sacrifices for you to afford and have? Get out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I am telling you, if you want to make change, you have to participate in the system that is afforded to us right now. The education effort's paying off. We'll go on with the education effort, but we cannot afford to go backwards into the quagmire of bureaucracy and authoritarianism by an invading force that is set up by international bankers that have bonded our children. I'm going to continue with Mr. Whitehead's article next week. Get out and vote, my friends. Get out and vote. We always say to you, seek truth, obtain knowledge, manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. Well, take grip of that responsibility and get out and vote. Thank you very much for watching our program.
Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.